The coffee cup flew through the air like a brown missile, splattering hot liquid across the white marble wall of the corner office. Marcus Sterling stood behind his massive desk, his face red with anger, his expensive suit wrinkled from another sleepless night. The woman sitting across from him didn't even flinch. "You want to know why everyone leaves?" she said quietly, her voice cutting through his rage like a knife through butter. "Because you're not just a bad boss, Marcus. You're a broken man who thinks money can fix everything." Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Please subscribe to my channel for more sweet videos like this. Let the story continue. Marcus's mouth fell open. In 15 years of running Sterling Industries, no one had ever spoken to him like that. Not as board members, not as business partners, and definitely not as assistants. 23 assistants had quit in the past 2 years. 23. Each one had walked out after enduring his impossible demands, his explosive temper, and his complete lack of respect for anyone he considered beneath him. But this woman was different. She sat there in her simple blue dress, her brown hair pulled back in a neat bun, looking at it with eyes that seemed to see right through his $1,000,000 armor. Her name was Emma Chun, and she was about to turn his entire world upside down in ways he couldn't even imagine. "Get out," Marcus growled, pointing toward the door. "Pack your things and leave. You're fired." Emma didn't move. She simply crossed her legs and folded her hands in her lap. "No. What did you just say to me?" "I said no, Marcus. I'm not leaving. And you're not firing me." The silence in the room was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city of New York buzzed with life 40 stories below. Inside this office, two people stared at each other like gunfighters in an old Western movie. Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. This was impossible. This was crazy. No one defied Marcus Sterling. He was worth $300 million. He owned buildings, companies, and politicians. He could destroy careers with a single phone call. "You think you could just sit there and refuse me?" he whispered, his voice dangerously low. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Emma smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I know exactly who you are, Marcus. You're a 42-year-old man who hasn't eaten a real meal in 3 days. You're taking pills to sleep and drinking coffee to stay awake. Your wife left you 6 months ago, and you haven't talked to your daughter in over a year. You work 16 hours a day because you're terrified of being alone with your thoughts." Marcus felt like he'd been slapped. How did she know about the pills? How did she know about Sarah leaving? How did she know about Emma, his little girl who wouldn't even answer his phone calls anymore? That's none of your business," he stammered. "Everything about you is my business," Emma said, standing up slowly. "I'm your assistant. But more than that, I'm the only person in this building who actually cares whether you live or die. And right now, Marcus, you're dying. Maybe not physically, but in every way that matters." She walked around the desk, and Marcus instinctively backed away. This small woman, barely 5 feet tall, somehow seemed to fill the entire room with her presence. "Your blood pressure's through the roof," she continued, her voice calm and steady. "Your hands shake when you think no one is looking. You snap at everyone because you're in constant pain, and you're too proud to admit you need help." "Stop," Marcus said, but his voice cracked. "You want to know why I won't quit like the others? Because they all saw you as just another rich jerk who treated people badly. But I see something different. I see a man who's so scared of failing that he's forgotten how to succeed." Marcus felt something strange happening in his chest. It was like a dam was cracking, and all the water he'd been holding back for years was about to come rushing out. He gripped the edge of his desk with white knuckles. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but even he could hear how weak his voice sounded. "Your father started this company with nothing but a dream and a borrowed truck," Emma said, moving even closer. "He built it with his bare hands, treating every employee like family. When he died, he left you everything. But somewhere along the way, you forgot his lessons. You forgot that businesses are built by people, not by fear." The mention of his father hit Marcus like a physical blow. Thomas Sterling had been his hero, his role model, his everything. When cancer took him 5 years ago, Marcus had thrown himself into the business with desperate intensity. He'd grown the company from a small regional operation into a national powerhouse. But the cost? Don't you dare bring my father into this, Marcus said, his voice shaking with emotion. He would be ashamed of what you become, Emma said simply. That did it. Marcus lunged forward, his hands reaching for her shoulders, ready to shake her or push her away or do something, anything to make her stop talking. But Emma was ready. She caught his wrists in her small hands and held them firmly. There it is, she said softly. There's the real Marcus Sterling. The one who's been hiding behind all that anger and money and power. The one who's been hurting so bad he can't even see straight. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. This was impossible. CEOs didn't cry. Millionaires didn't break down in their offices. But here he was, trembling like a leaf in the grip of a woman who made $30,000 a year. Let me go, he whispered. Not until you hear me out, Emma said. I've been watching you for 6 months. I've seen you pace this office at midnight, talking to yourself. I've seen you stare at pictures of your daughter until your coffee gets cold. I've seen you write emails to your wife that you never send. How do you know about? Because I pay attention. Because I care. Because unlike everyone else in your life, I'm not here for your money or your power or what you can do for me. I'm here because I believe the man your father raised is still in there somewhere, buried under all this pain and anger. Marcus felt his knees going weak. The fight was draining out of him like air from a punctured balloon. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen. Not Marcus Sterling, the CEO, not Marcus Sterling, the millionaire, but just Marcus, the scared, lonely man who'd been pretending to be strong for so long he'd forgotten what real strength felt like. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma released his wrists and stepped back. I want you to let me help you. Not as your assistant, but as someone who gives a damn about whether you make it through this mess alive. I don't understand. Starting tomorrow, things are going to change around here. You're going to start eating real food. You're going to start sleeping at night instead of living on pills and coffee. You're going to start treating your employees like human beings instead of servants. Marcus almost laughed. You think you can just waltz in here and change everything about how I run my company? I don't think I can, Emma said with that same quiet confidence. I know I can, because you're going to let me. Because deep down, you know I'm right. You know that what you're doing isn't working. You're losing everything that matters while gaining things that don't. She walked back to her chair and sat down, smoothing her dress like nothing had happened. The question is, Marcus, are you brave enough to let someone help you? Are you man enough to admit that you can't do this alone anymore? Marcus stood there, swaying slightly, feeling like his entire world had just been turned upside down. This woman, this impossible woman, had just done something that no one had been able to do in 5 years. She'd made him feel something other than anger or numbness. And if I say no, he asked. Emma's smile was sad but determined. Then I'll sit in that chair every day and watch you destroy yourself. Because that's what assistants do, Marcus. We assist, and right now, the best way I can assist you is by not letting you give up on yourself. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, seeing something in her eyes that he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Real, honest hope. When was the last time someone had looked at him with hope instead of fear or greed or calculation? Why? He asked finally. Why do you care what happens to me? Emma was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. Because 6 months ago, I was where you are now. Different circumstances, same pain. Someone helped me find my way back to the light. Now it's my turn to help someone else. She stood up and walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. Think about it, Marcus. Think about what your father would want for you. Think about whether you want to spend the rest of your life hiding behind anger and money, or whether you want to remember what it feels like to be truly alive. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the smell of spilled coffee. For the first time in years, the silence in his office didn't feel oppressive. It felt possible. Marcus walked to his window and looked out at the city below. Millions of people go about their lives, most of them probably happier than he was despite having a fraction of his wealth. When had everything gotten so complicated? When had he become the kind of man that people feared instead of respected? He thought about his father's funeral, about the hundreds of employees who had shown up to pay their respects. They hadn't come because they were afraid of Thomas Sterling. They'd come because they loved him, because he'd made their lives better just by being in them. Marcus closed his eyes and made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, he would let Emma Chun try to save him. He didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if he was strong enough or brave enough or good enough to become the man his father had raised him to be. But for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Sterling was willing to find out. The next morning would bring challenges he couldn't imagine, revelations that would shake him to his core, and a journey that would test every belief he'd held about himself and the world around him. But tonight, as he finally turned off his office lights and headed home to his empty mansion, Marcus Sterling felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt hope, and in the elevator, riding down to the parking garage, he couldn't shake the feeling that Emma Chun was hiding something. Something big. Something that would explain how a simple assistant had been able to see through him so completely, so quickly. As the elevator doors opened, Marcus made a mental note to find out everything he could about Emma Chun. Because if she was going to turn his life upside down, he wanted to know exactly who was holding controls. What he would discover about his mysterious assistant would shock him more than anything that had happened in his office that day. And it would change not just his life, but the entire future of Sterling Industries forever. But that revelation would have to wait until tomorrow. Tonight, Marcus Sterling was going home to get his first real night's sleep in months. And for the first time in years, he wasn't dreading what the morning might bring. Marcus woke up at 6:30 a.m. without an alarm clock. For the first time in months, he hadn't taken his sleeping pills. His body felt strange, rested but alert, like a car engine that had finally been given clean oil after running on sludge for years. He stumbled to his bathroom and caught sight of himself in the mirror. His hair was messy, his face had stubble, and there were bags under his eyes. But something was different. His eyes didn't look dead anymore. They looked alive. As he showered, Marcus found himself thinking about Emma Chun. In the light of day, yesterday's confrontation seemed almost like a dream. Had she really stood up to him like that? Had he really almost cried in front of her? More importantly, had he really agreed to let her help him? Marcus dried off and walked to his closet. Normally, he would grab one of his 15 identical gray suits, knot his tie in exactly the same way, and head to the office by 7 a.m. But today, something made him pause. He reached for a navy blue suit instead, one his wife Sarah had bought him for their anniversary 2 years ago. He'd never worn it because it was too casual for a CEO. As he drove to the office, Marcus noticed things he'd missed for years. The way the morning sun hit the buildings just right. The smell of fresh bagels from a street vendor. A father walking his daughter to school, both of them laughing about something. When had he stopped noticing these things? When had the world become just a blur of meetings and deadlines and profit margins? Marcus parked in his reserved spot and took the elevator to the 40th floor. The Sterling Industries headquarters buzzed with its usual morning energy. Employees hurried past with coffee and files, their faces focused and serious. But as Marcus walked through the hallway, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. They were all afraid of him, not just respectful or professional, actually afraid. People stepped aside when they saw him coming. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes darted away from his face like he was some kind of monster. When had this happened? When had he become someone his own employees feared? Marcus reached his office and stopped dead in his tracks. Emma Chun was already there, sitting behind a small desk that hadn't been there yesterday. She was typing on a laptop, her brown hair catching the morning light from a window. On her desk was a plate of what looked like homemade cookies and a thermos of coffee. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, without looking up from her screen. What are you doing here so early?" "I'm your assistant," Emma said simply. This is when assistants arrive. "I've been here since 6 a.m., going through your schedule and making some changes." Marcus felt his old anger starting to rise. "You can't just make changes to my schedule without asking me." Emma finally looked up, and her smile was patient but firm. "I can, and I did." "Sit down, Marcus." We have a lot to talk about. I don't take orders from your employees? Emma interrupted. From people who make less money than you? From women? From people who actually care about your well-being? Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Yesterday's conversation came flooding back. The promise he'd made to himself to try something different. Fine, he said, sitting down heavily in his chair. What changes did you make? Emma stood up and walked around to his side of the desk. She was holding a printed schedule, and Marcus could see it was covered in red marks and crossed-out appointments. Your first meeting was supposed to be at 7:30 with the board of directors, she said. I moved it to 10 a.m. You can't do that. The board doesn't wait for anyone. They do now, Emma said calmly. I called each member personally and explained that you're implementing new policies to improve company culture and productivity. They were actually very interested. Marcus stared at her. You called the board members? Do you have any idea how much power those people have? About as much power as you give them, Emma replied. Which brings me to your second change. Your 8 a.m. meeting with the Johnson account? Canceled. That's a $20 million deal. That's a $20 million deal with a company that treats its workers like garbage, Emma said, her voice getting stronger. Did you know that Johnson Industries has the highest employee turnover rate in their industry? That they've been sued 17 times in the past 3 years for workplace harassment? Marcus felt his face getting hot. I don't care about their internal problems. I care about profit. And that's exactly why you're miserable, Emma said, moving closer to him. You've forgotten that business is about people, not just money. Your father never would have worked with a company like Johnson Industries. Don't bring my father into this again. I'll bring him into this every day if I have to, Emma said firmly. Because he's the key to everything, Marcus. He's the man you used to be, and he's the man you can be again. She placed a cookie from her desk in front of him. Eat this. I don't have time for... You have time for everything I tell you to have time for, Emma said, her voice taking on a tone that brooked no argument. From now on, you eat 3 real meals a day. You sleep at least 7 hours a night. You exercise. And you start treating your employees like human beings instead of machines. Marcus picked up the cookie and took a bite. It was oatmeal raisin, and it tasted like something his grandmother used to make. When was the last time he'd eaten something that wasn't from a vending machine or a business lunch? Why are you doing this? He asked softly. Emma sat down across from him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked vulnerable. Because I know what it's like to lose yourself in work. To think that if you just push harder, work longer, make more money, somehow the pain will go away. What pain? Emma was quiet for a long moment. My husband died 3 years ago. Car accident. He was on his way home from work, and a drunk driver ran a red light. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Emma, I'm so sorry. After he died, I threw myself into work just like you did. I worked 18-hour days, took on every project, said yes to everything. I thought if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't have to feel the grief. She looked out the window, her eyes distant. But grief doesn't work that way. It doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It just grows stronger, like a cancer, until it starts destroying everything else in your life. What happened? I had a breakdown, right in the middle of a presentation to 50 people. I just broke, started crying and couldn't stop. They had to call an ambulance. Marcus could barely imagine this strong, confident woman falling apart like that. How did you recover? Someone help me, Emma said simply. My friend Lisa saw what was happening and basically kidnapped me, took me to her cabin in the mountains, and made me deal with my grief properly. She didn't let me work, didn't let me distract myself. She just sat with me while I cried and screamed and fell apart. And that worked. It saved my life, Emma said. Lisa taught me that healing isn't about getting over pain. It's about learning to live with it in a healthy way. She showed me that work can be meaningful and fulfilling, but it can't be everything. Marcus felt something clicking into place. So now you're doing the same thing for me. I'm trying to, Emma said, but I can't force you to heal, Marcus. I can only create the conditions where healing is possible. The rest is up to you. Marcus finished his cookie and looked at the schedule. Emma had changed. Instead of 12 meetings packed back to back, there were 6 meetings with breaks in between. Instead of working lunch, there was an actual lunch break. Instead of staying until 10 p.m., the day ended at 6 p.m. This schedule is crazy, he said. I'll never get everything done. You'll get the important things done, Emma corrected. The things that actually matter. The things that move the company forward instead of just keeping you busy. But what about? Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. That's strange. I'm getting calls from reporters. Reporters? 3 different business journals want to interview you about your new management philosophy. How did they even know about the schedule changes? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. I don't know. Unless... Before he could finish the thought, his office door burst open. Robert Hayes, the chairman of Sterling Industries' board of directors, strode in without knocking. He was a tall, thin man in his 60s with gray hair and cold blue eyes. Behind him were 2 other board members, Patricia Wells and David Kim. Marcus, Robert said, his voice sharp with anger. We need to talk. Now. Emma stood up immediately. Mr. Hayes, Marcus has a busy morning. If you'd like to schedule... I don't talk to assistants, Robert snapped, not even looking at her. Marcus, what's this nonsense about canceling the Johnson deal? Marcus felt his old patterns kicking in, the urge to apologize, to explain, to make everyone happy. But then he looked at Emma, who was watching him with calm, steady eyes. The Johnson deal is canceled, Marcus said, his voice stronger than he felt. I don't want to do business with companies that don't treat their employees well. Patricia Wells, a sharp-faced woman in her 50s, stepped forward. Since when do you care about employee treatment? You've been cutting benefits and increasing hours for the past 2 years. The words hit Marcus like a slap. Was that true? Had he really been that callous about his own employees? Things are changing, Marcus said quietly. Things are not changing, Robert said, his voice rising. You work for the shareholders, Marcus. Your job is to make money, not to play social worker. Actually, Emma said, stepping forward, his job is to run a successful company. And successful companies are built on happy, productive employees, not fear and exhaustion. David Kim, a younger man with thick glasses, laughed harshly. And who exactly are you to have opinions about how we run our company? Emma smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. I'm the person who's going to help you understand why Sterling Industries is about to become the most profitable company in its sector. That's ridiculous, Patricia said. We're already highly profitable. You're profitable in the short term, Emma replied, but you're hemorrhaging talent. Your employee satisfaction scores are at an all-time low, and your reputation in industry is terrible. Companies like yours don't last. Robert's face was turning red. Marcus, if you don't fire this woman immediately, we're going to have a serious problem. Marcus looked at Emma, then at the board members, then back at Emma. This was it. This was the moment where he had to choose between his old life and whatever Emma was offering him. No, he said quietly. What did you say? Robert demanded. I said no, Marcus repeated, his voice getting stronger. I'm not firing her, and I'm not going back to business as usual. Patricia stepped forward. Marcus, you're clearly not thinking straight. Maybe you need to take some time off. He's thinking more clearly than he has in years, Emma interrupted, which is exactly what's got you scared. David pushed his glasses up his nose. Scared? Why would we be scared of a CEO who wants to throw away millions of dollars on feel-good nonsense? Emma's smile grew wider. Because you know that if Marcus starts running this company the way his father did, you won't be able to control him anymore. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. He could see the fury in Robert's eyes, the calculation in Patricia's expression, the nervous energy radiating from David. What's that supposed to mean? Robert asked, his voice dangerously quiet. It means, Emma said, walking around to stand beside Marcus, that some people on this board have been making decisions that aren't in the best interest of Sterling Industries. And now that Marcus is starting to pay attention again, those decisions are going to come to light. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What decisions? Emma looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold secrets. That's what we're going to find out. Starting with why the Johnson deal was so important to certain board members, and why they're so desperate to keep you distracted and overworked. Robert's face had gone pale. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Emma asked. Then why don't we all sit down and go through the books together? I'm sure Marcus would love to see exactly where all the company's money has been going. The board members exchanged glances, and Marcus realized with growing horror that Emma was right. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time, and he'd been too buried in meaningless, busy work to notice. Get out, he said quietly. Marcus, Robert started. Get out. Marcus shouted, standing up so fast his chair rolled backward. All of you, get out of my office right now. The board members left, but not before Robert turned back with a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, Marcus. Not by a long shot. When the door closed behind him, Marcus sank back into his chair. His hands were shaking, and his heart was racing. What have I done? He whispered. Emma sat down across from him, her expression serious but not unkind. You've just taken the first step towards saving your company, and possibly your life. But if they're stealing from the company, then we'll stop them, Emma said firmly. But Marcus, there's something else you need to know. Something about why I'm really here. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time since he'd met her, Emma Chun looked nervous. What do you mean? Emma took a deep breath. I didn't answer your job posting by accident. I sought you out specifically. Because stopping the board isn't the only reason I'm here. Then what? I'm here, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper, because your father asked me to look after you. Before he died, he knew something was wrong with the company. He knew the board was up to something. And he knew that after he was gone, you'd be in danger. Marcus felt the world tilting around him. That's impossible. My father never mentioned you. He couldn't, Emma said, because he was afraid they were watching him. He was afraid that if they knew he suspected something, they'd move against him sooner. Move against him? What are you talking about? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, I don't think your father died of cancer. I think he was murdered. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The room seemed to spin around him, and he gripped the arms of his chair to keep from falling. No, he whispered. No, that's not possible. I have proof, Emma said quietly. Medical records that don't match his official cause of death. Financial records that show unusual transactions right before he got sick. And a letter he wrote to me, telling me to find you if anything happened to him. Marcus felt like he was drowning. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his company, his father's death, it was all crumbling around him. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday? Because yesterday you weren't ready to hear it, Emma said. You were too angry, too hurt, too lost in your own pain. I needed you to trust me first. I needed you to want to change. Marcus looked at this woman who had walked into his life and turned everything upside down. Who are you, really? Emma's smile was sad and determined. I'm exactly who I said I was. I'm someone who cares about you. Someone who wants to help you find your way back to being the man your father raised you to be. But you're also something else. Yes, Emma said. I'm also a private investigator. Your father hired me 6 months before he died to investigate the board. I've been building a case against them ever since. Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. So everything that's happened, everything between us, it's all been part of some investigation? No, Emma said firmly. The investigation is why I came here. But everything that's happened between us, everything I've said to you about healing and changing and becoming better, that's all real. You needed help, Marcus. You needed someone to care about you. And I do care about you. How can I trust anything you say? Because, Emma said, standing up and walking to the window, I'm about to show you something that will prove everything I've told you is true. And once you see it, there's no going back. Once you know the truth about your father's death and what the board has been doing, your life will never be the same. She turned back to him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. It was a look of someone who had seen terrible things and was about to share them. "The question is," Emma said, "are you ready to know the truth? Are you ready to find out what really happened to your father and what the board has been doing to Sterling Industries while you've been drowning in grief and work?" Marcus felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss that might swallow him whole. But he also felt something else, a burning need to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. "Show me," he said. Emma nodded and walked to her desk. She pulled out a thick manila folder and placed it in front of him. "This is going to change everything, Marcus. Once you open that folder, you can't know what's inside." Marcus looked at the folder, then at Emma, then back at the folder. His hand shook as he reached for it. And in that moment, with his fingers touching the edge of the folder that would reveal the truth about his father's death and conspiracy that had been destroying his company, Marcus Sterling realized that Emma Chun hadn't just refused to quit. She had come to save him from something much worse than loneliness and overwork. She had come to save him from the people who had murdered his father and were now coming for him. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened the manila folder. The first thing he saw was a photograph of his father, taken just 2 weeks before he died. Thomas Sterling looked thin and weak, sitting in a hospital bed, but his eyes were alert and focused. He was holding a piece of paper with writing on it. "What is this?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Your father knew he was dying," Emma said quietly, "but not from cancer. Read the paper he's holding." Marcus squinted at the photograph and could make out his father's handwriting. "If something happens to me, find Emma Chun. She has the truth. Trust no one else." The paper slipped from Marcus's fingers. "This is impossible. Dad had pancreatic cancer. The doctors confirmed it." "Look at the next page," Emma said. Marcus flipped the page and found medical records. But these weren't from his father's regular doctor. These were from a private lab that had tested his father's blood just days before his death. "High levels of arsenic," Marcus read aloud. "Administered over several months. Consistent with chronic poisoning." The room began to spin. Marcus gripped the edge of his desk, so hard his knuckles turned white. "Someone was poisoning my father?" "For at least 6 months before he died," Emma confirmed. "The symptoms look exactly like pancreatic cancer in the early stages. Nausea, weight loss, abdominal pain. By the time anyone thinks to test for poison, it's usually too late." Marcus felt sick. His father hadn't died from some random disease. Someone had deliberately, slowly murdered him. Who? Who would do this? "Keep reading," Emma said. The next page showed financial records from Sterling Industries. Marcus recognized the format. These were internal accounting documents that only board members and senior executives could access. But the numbers didn't make sense. $20 million missing from the pension fund. Marcus read. $15 million from the employee insurance fund. $8 million from the charity foundation. "Someone has been stealing from the company for years," Emma explained. "Your father discovered it about a year before he died. He started investigating quietly, but he must have gotten too close to the truth." Marcus flipped through more pages. Bank statements showing money being transferred to offshore accounts. Forged signatures on company documents. Email exchanges between board members discussing the Thomas problem and how to handle the situation permanently. "This is from Robert Hayes' personal email," Marcus said, reading one of the messages. "He's talking about removing obstacles and protecting the operation." "Robert Hayes has been stealing from Sterling Industries for 3 years," Emma said, "along with Patricia Wells and David Kim. They've taken nearly $50 million, and they were afraid your father was going to expose them." Marcus felt rage building in his chest like a volcano about to explode. "So they killed him." "The arsenic was administered through his coffee," Emma said. "Your father had the same coffee every morning from the same cafe. All they had to do was pay someone to add a little extra ingredient. Do you have proof of that?" Emma reached into the folder and pulled out a recording device. "Your father was smarter than they thought. He started recording his meetings with the board in his final weeks. Listen to this." She pressed play, and suddenly Thomas Sterling's voice filled the room. Marcus hadn't heard his father's voice in over a year, and the sound of it made his eyes fill with tears. "Robert, I know what you've been doing. Thomas's voice said. The pension fund, the insurance money, the charity donations. I have all the records. Robert Hayes's voice responded, cold and calculating. Thomas, I think you're confused. You've been sick. Maybe you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Thomas said. And I'm giving you 24 hours to return every penny you've stolen, or I'm going to the police. There was a long pause, then Robert's voice again, but this time it sounded different. Dangerous. Thomas, I really think you should reconsider. You're not, well, anything could happen to a sick man. Are you threatening me? I'm looking out for you, Robert said, and for your son. It would be terrible if something happened to both of you. The recording ended and Marcus sat in stunned silence. They hadn't just killed his father. They had threatened to kill him too. This recording was made 3 days before your father died, Emma said. He gave it to me along with all the other evidence, with instructions to find you if anything happened to him. Marcus looked up at her, his mind racing. But why didn't you come to me right away? Why wait 6 months? Emma's expression was pained. Because I knew you weren't ready. You were drowning in grief and work, exactly like they wanted. If I had come to you 6 months ago with this story, you would have thought I was crazy. You would have fired me or called security. But you've been watching me all this time? I've been waiting for the right moment, Emma said. I needed you to trust me first. I needed you to see that the board was manipulating you, keeping you busy and distracted, so you wouldn't notice what they were doing. Marcus felt everything clicking into place. The impossible schedule, the endless meetings, the constant crises that kept me working 18 hours a day, all designed to keep you from looking too closely at the company's finances, Emma confirmed. As long as you were exhausted and overwhelmed, you wouldn't notice that millions of dollars were disappearing. Marcus stood up and began pacing. But why kill my father? Why not just wait for him to retire? Because he was going to change his will, Emma said. Your father was planning to leave control of the company to you, but with conditions. He wanted to set up a trust that would protect the employees and make sure the company stayed true to his values. That would have made it harder for them to steal. Impossible, Emma corrected. The trust would have required independent audits, employee representatives on the board, and complete financial transparency. Everything they've been doing would have been exposed. Marcus felt his anger growing stronger. These people hadn't just killed his father. They had stolen from thousands of employees, from charities, from people who depended on Sterling Industries for their livelihoods. So what's the plan? He asked. How do we stop them? Emma's smile was grim. That's where things get complicated. The board knows you're starting to ask questions. That's why they came here this morning. They're getting nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. Marcus, you don't understand, Emma said urgently. These people have already killed once. If they think you're getting too close to the truth, they won't hesitate to kill again. The words hit Marcus like a cold slap. You think they'll try to kill me? I think they're already planning it, Emma said. The question is when and how. Marcus sat back down heavily. Then what do we do? We can't just sit here and wait for them to murder me. We're going to beat them at their own game, Emma said. But we have to be smart about it. We need more evidence, and we need to make sure we can prove everything in court. What kind of evidence? Emma pulled out another folder. Financial records that I haven't been able to access yet. They're kept in a safe in Robert Hayes's office. We need to get in there and copy everything. That's breaking and entering. That's saving your life, Emma said firmly. Marcus, these people have stolen $50 million and committed murder. Do you really think they're going to stop because we asked them nicely? Marcus thought about his father's voice on the recording, about the threat against both of them, about the years of manipulation and lies. What do you need me to do? There's a board meeting tomorrow night, Emma said. Robert always stays late afterward to review documents. Really, he's moving more money into his offshore accounts. While he's distracted, we'll get into his office and copy everything. How do we get past security? Emma's smile was mysterious. I have my ways. But Marcus, once we do this, there's no going back. They'll know we're on to them, and they'll do everything they can to stop us. Including killing us? Especially including killing us, Emma said. So, we need to be prepared for anything. Marcus looked at the evidence spread across his desk, then at Emma Chun, this woman who had appeared in his life, and turned everything upside down. There's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told me yet. Emma was quiet for a moment. Yes. What is it? Your father didn't just hire me to investigate the board, she said. He hired me because he knew I had a personal reason to want justice. What kind of personal reason? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Remember when I told you my husband died in a car accident? That a drunk driver ran a red light? Marcus nodded. The drunk driver was David Kim, Emma said. He was coming home from a celebration dinner after successfully embezzling $2 million from the employee pension fund. He was so drunk he could barely walk, but he got behind the wheel anyway. Marcus felt his blood run cold. David Kim killed your husband? And he never spent a day in jail, Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion. He uses money and connections to make the whole thing disappear. The police report was buried. Witnesses were paid off, and the judge was convinced it was just a tragic accident. So this is about revenge? This is about justice, Emma said fiercely. For my husband, for your father, for all the employees whose money has been stolen, for everyone who's been hurt by these people. Marcus stood up and walked to a window. Below, the city hummed with life. Millions of people go about their daily business, trusting that the companies they worked for and invested in were honest and fair. How many other companies are they doing this to? He asked. I don't know, Emma admitted, but I suspect Sterling Industries isn't the only one. These people are professional thieves. Marcus, they've turned corporate crime into an art form. Marcus turned back to her. Then we stopped them. Tonight. Tonight? You said the board meeting is tomorrow night. That gives them 24 hours to cover their tracks, move more money, maybe even disappear. I'm not waiting. Emma looked worried. Marcus, if we rush this. They killed my father, Marcus said, his voice hard as steel. They've been stealing from my employees for years. They threatened to kill me. I'm not giving them one more day to hurt anyone else. Then we'll need help, Emma said. We can't do this alone. What kind of help? Emma pulled out her phone. I have contacts in the FBI. People who specialize in corporate crime. If we can get them the evidence they need, they can arrest the entire board tomorrow. Can you trust them? I can trust one of them, Emma said. Agent Sarah Mitchell. She's been investigating corporate corruption for 15 years, and she's completely clean. No connections to Sterling Industries. No way for the board to get to her. Marcus felt hope rising in his chest. Call her. Emma dialed a number and put the phone on speaker. After 3 rings, a woman's voice answered. Mitchell here. Sarah, it's Emma Chun. I need to cash in that favor you owe me. Emma, I was wondering when you'd call. What do you need? I need you to help me take down a group of corporate executives who've been embezzling money and committing murder. There was a pause. Murder? They killed Thomas Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Industries. Made it look like cancer, but he was actually poisoned with arsenic. Do you have proof? I have medical records, financial documents, and audio recordings. But I need more evidence, and I need it tonight. Tonight? Emma, you can't rush something like this. We need time to build a proper case. Sarah, Emma said, her voice urgent, they're planning to kill Thomas Sterling's son. If we don't move fast, there's going to be another murder. Marcus stepped closer to the phone. Agent Mitchell, this is Marcus Sterling. These people killed my father, and they're not going to stop with me. How many more people have to die before we do something? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Mr. Sterling, I understand you're upset, but... I'm not upset, Marcus interrupted. I'm terrified, and I'm angry, and I'm not going to let them kill anyone else. What do you need from me? Emma smiled. We need you to arrest 3 people tomorrow morning. Robert Hayes, Patricia Wells, and David Kim. But first, we need to get evidence from Hayes' office tonight. I can't authorize a break-in. You don't have to, Emma said. Just be ready to move when we call you. And Sarah, make sure you have backup. These people are desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. "I'll be ready," Sarah said. "But Emma, be careful. If you're right about these people, they won't go down without a fight." Emma hung up and looked at Marcus. "Last chance to back out. Once we do this, everything changes." Marcus thought about his father's voice on the recording, about the threat against both of them, about Emma's husband dying because of David Kim's greed. "I'm not backing out." "Then we'd better get prepared," Emma said. "Because tonight, we're going to find out just how far these people will go to protect their secrets." As the afternoon sun streamed through the office windows, Marcus Sterling and Emma Chen began planning the most dangerous night of their lives. They had no idea that Robert Hayes was already 3 steps ahead of them, or that by sunset, one of them would be fighting for their life. The board had been stealing and killing for years. They weren't about to let 2 people with a folder full of evidence stop them now, but they had underestimated Emma Chen. And they had no idea what Marcus Sterling was capable of when someone he loved was in danger. Because sometime in the past 24 hours, without even realizing it, Marcus Sterling had fallen in love with the woman who would save his life. And he would do anything to protect her, even if it meant destroying everything he had built to get justice for the people who had taken everything from him. At 9 p.m., Sterling Industries headquarters was almost empty. The cleaning crew had finished their work and gone home. The security guards were making their rounds on the lower floors. And in the parking garage, Marcus Sterling sat in his car with Emma Chen, watching the entrance to the building. "Robert's car is still here," Emma whispered, pointing to a black Mercedes in the executive parking area. "He's definitely still in his office." Marcus checked his phone. "The security cameras?" "I hacked into the system an hour ago," Emma said. "I can loop the footage so it looks like the hallways are empty even when we're walking through them." Marcus looked at her with new eyes. This woman was full of surprises. "Where did you learn to do that?" "When you're a private investigator, you pick up certain skills," Emma said with a small smile. "Plus, my husband was a computer programmer. He taught me a few things before he died." They sat in silence for a moment, both thinking about what they were about to do. Breaking into a corporate office might not sound dangerous, but they both knew that Robert Hayes and his partners were desperate men who had already killed once. "Emma," Marcus said quietly, "if something happens to me tonight—" "Nothing's going to happen to you," Emma interrupted. "But if it does," Marcus continued, "I want you to know that meeting you has been the best thing that's happened to me in years. You saved my life." Emma turned to look at him, and in the dim light of the parking garage, Marcus could see tears in her eyes. "Marcus, I mean it," he said. "Whatever happens tonight, whatever we find in that office, I'm glad you didn't quit like all the others." Emma reached over and took his hand. "I'm glad, too." They might have said more, but Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it and frowned. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Agent Mitchell. She says she's in position outside the building with backup, but something doesn't feel right." "What do you mean?" "She says there are too many cars in the parking lot for this time of night, and she spotted at least 3 men who don't look like security guards." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "You think it's a trap?" "I think Robert Hayes is smarter than we gave him credit for," Emma said. "He must have figured out that we know something. So what do we do?" Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We go in anyway." "Are you crazy?" "Marcus, this might be our only chance," Emma said urgently. "If we wait, they'll move all the evidence. They'll transfer the rest of the money and disappear. We'll never be able to prove what they did to your father. But if it's a trap, then we sprint it on our terms," Emma said. "Agent Mitchell has backup. We have the element of surprise. And we have something they don't expect." "What's that?" Emma's smile was fierce. "We have nothing left to lose." Marcus looked at this woman who had turned his world upside down, who had shown him the truth about his father's death, who was willing to risk her life for justice. "Okay, let's do it." They got out of the car and walked toward the building. Emma had employee access cards that would get them through the lobby and into the elevators. As they walked, Marcus tried to look casual, but his heart was pounding so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. The lobby was empty except for one security guard at the front desk. He barely looked up as they swiped their cards and headed for the elevators. 40th floor, Emma whispered as they stepped into the elevator. As they rode up, Marcus tried to prepare himself for what they might find. More evidence of theft? Proof of his father's murder? Or 3 dangerous men waiting to kill them? The elevator doors opened, and the hallway was dark except for emergency lighting. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floor as they walked toward the executive offices. Robert's office is at the end of the hall, Emma whispered. They made it halfway before they heard the voice. I was wondering when you'd show up. Marcus and Emma froze. Robert Hayes stepped out of the shadows, and he wasn't alone. Patricia Wells and David Kim were with him, along with 2 men Marcus didn't recognize. Big men with cold eyes and expensive suits. Hello, Marcus, Robert said, his voice friendly but his eyes deadly. Taking a late-night tour of the office? We were just leaving, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. Oh, I don't think so, Patricia said. I think you're here to steal something that doesn't belong to you. David Kim stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. We know about your little investigation, Marcus. We know about the private detective you hired. Emma moved slightly in front of Marcus. We don't know what you're talking about. Please, Robert said. We've been monitoring your emails, your phone calls, your movements for weeks. Did you really think we didn't know what you were planning? Marcus felt trapped. If you know everything, then you know we have evidence. Proof of what you did to my father. What we did to your father, Robert repeated. You mean when we saved Sterling Industries from a sentimental old man who's going to destroy everything we built? You murdered him. We solved the problem, Patricia said coldly. Your father was weak. He cared more about employees and profits. He would have run this company into the ground. Instead, you've been stealing from it. Emma said. David laughed. Stealing? We've been taking what we earned. Do you have any idea how much money we've made for this company? How much value we created? By lying and cheating and killing people. Marcus shouted. By being practical, Robert said, your father was too emotional, too concerned with doing the right thing. The right thing doesn't pay for private jets and beach houses, Marcus. One of the big men stepped forward. Boss, we should finish this. Not yet, Tony, Robert said. First, I want to know what evidence they have, and I want to know who else knows about it. Emma's hand moved slowly toward her purse. Nobody else knows anything. I find that hard to believe, Patricia said. A smart investigator like you would have backup plans, insurance policies. The only insurance policy we need, Emma said, is the FBI agents who are surrounding this building right now. David's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Emma asked. She pulled out her phone and showed them the screen. Agent Sarah Mitchell, Federal Bureau of Investigation. One phone call and you're all under arrest. Robert's smile never wavered. Make the call. Emma looked confused. What? I said make the call, Robert repeated. Call your FBI friend. I'd love to talk to her. Emma hesitated, and Marcus realized something was wrong. Very wrong. You see, Robert continued, Agent Sarah Mitchell is a very old friend of mine. We went to college together. In fact, she's the one who told me you've been asking questions about corporate corruption. Marcus felt the world spinning around him. No, that's not possible. Oh, it's very possible, Patricia said. Did you really think we could steal $50 million without having people in law enforcement on our payroll? Emma's face had gone white. Sarah wouldn't, she's one of the good ones. There are no good ones, David said. There are just people who haven't been offered enough money yet. Robert pulled out his own phone. Sarah? Yes, they're here. Both of them. And they have the evidence with them. He listened for a moment, then smiled. She says to tell you hello, Emma, and that she's sorry it had to end this way. Emma sank against the wall. I trusted her. You trusted the wrong person, Robert said. Just like your father did, Marcus. He trusted his employees, his board, his family. Look where it got him. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. You're not going to get away with this. We already have, Patricia said. Your father is dead. The evidence you think you have won't hold up in court. And soon, you and your little investigator friend are going to have a tragic accident. What kind of accident? Emma asked, though Marcus could tell she already knew the answer. A fire, Robert said. Terrible thing, office fires. Especially when they happen late at night, when the sprinkler system mysteriously malfunctions. One of the big men, Tony, pulled out a gas can and started pouring it on the carpet. The smell of gasoline filled the hallway. You're going to burn the building down? Marcus asked in horror. Just this floor, David said. Just the executive offices. The insurance money alone will be worth $20 million. Plus, it will destroy any evidence that might have been hidden up here. Including us, Emma said quietly. Including you, Robert confirmed. 2 people working late, trying to save important company documents. Heroes, really. It's tragic that they couldn't escape in time. Marcus looked at Emma, and she looked back at him. They were trapped. The FBI agent they trusted was corrupt. The board members were about to burn them alive, and there was no way out. But then Emma did something unexpected. She smiled. You know, she said, you all made one big mistake. What's that? Patricia asked. You assumed Agent Sarah Mitchell was the only person I contacted tonight. Robert's smile faded slightly. What do you mean? Emma pulled a small device from her purse. This conversation has been broadcast live to the FBI field office, the district attorney's office, and 3 major news networks. That's impossible, David said. Is it? Emma asked. You see, when you've been investigating corporate corruption as long as I have, you learn not to trust anyone completely, even FBI agents. She held up the device. This is a satellite transmitter. Everything you've said in the past 10 minutes has been recorded and transmitted to about 50 different people. The color drained from Robert's face. You're lying, Robert Hayes. Emma said clearly into the device, just confess murdering Thomas Sterling with arsenic poison. Patricia Wells and David Kim admitted to embezzling $50 million from Sterling Industries, and all 3 of them are about to commit arson and murder to cover their tracks. Marcus heard the sound of sirens in the distance, getting closer. That would be the real FBI, Emma said, the ones who aren't on your payroll. Tony dropped the gas can and reached inside his jacket, but Emma was faster. She pulled out a gun and pointed at him. I wouldn't, she said calmly. You don't have the guts to use that, Patricia said. Emma's eyes went cold. You killed my husband. You murdered Marcus's father. You've stolen from thousands of employees and their families. Trust me, I have the guts. The sirens were getting louder. Marcus could see flashing lights through the windows. Boss, Tony said nervously, we need to go now. But Robert Hayes was staring at Emma with something like respect. You're good. I'll give you that. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, Marcus said, stepping forward. It's been over since the moment you decided to kill my father. The elevator doors opened, and FBI agents poured into the hallway. Real ones this time, led by a tall woman with gray hair and steel blue eyes. Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI, she announced. Robert Hayes, Patricia Wells, David Kim, you're under arrest for conspiracy, embezzlement, and murder. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Robert looked at Marcus one last time. You think you've won? You have no idea what you just destroyed. Sterling Industries will collapse without us. No, Marcus said quietly. It'll finally be free. As the board members were led away, Agent Walsh approached Marcus and Emma. Ms. Chun, that was incredibly risky. If that transmitter hadn't worked. It had to work, Emma said simply. Too many people have died already. Marcus put his arm around Emma's shoulders. She was shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Is it really over? He asked Agent Walsh. The arrests are just the beginning, she said. We'll need full statements from both of you. There will be trials, investigations, media attention. It's going to be a long road. Marcus looked at Emma. Are you ready for a long road? She leaned against him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked small and vulnerable. I'm ready for anything, as long as we're together. As they walked toward the elevator, Past the gasoline stains and the evidence of how close they'd come to dying, Marcus realized that Emma Chen had done more than save his life and his company. She had given him something to live for. But their celebration was premature. As they reached the lobby, Agent Walsh's phone rang. She listened for a moment, then her face went pale. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Agent Sarah Mitchell," she said grimly. "She's missing, along with $12 million from an FBI evidence fund." Emma felt her blood run cold. "She's running." "Worse than that," Agent Walsh said. "She's armed, dangerous, and she blames both of you for destroying her career. We have reports that she's heading to your apartment, Ms. Chun." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "Then we go somewhere else." "She has access to FBI resources," Agent Walsh said. "She can find you anywhere in the city." Emma looked at Marcus, then at Agent Walsh. "Then we end this tonight. We go to my apartment and wait for her." "Absolutely not," Marcus said. "That's suicide." "No," Emma said firmly. "That's justice. Sarah Mitchell helped kill your father and my husband. She took money to look the other way while innocent people suffered. And now she's coming for us." She looked at Agent Walsh. "Will you help us?" Agent Walsh was quiet for a moment. "What did you have in mind?" Emma's smile was grim and determined. A trap, but this time with the one setting it. As they walked out of Sterling Industries headquarters, Marcus realized that their fight was far from over. The corrupt board members were in custody, but the corrupt FBI agent was still out there, still dangerous, still coming for them. And before the sun rose, one of them might be dead. But for the first time in years, Marcus Sterling wasn't afraid. He had Emma Chin by his side, the truth on his side, and justice within reach. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, even if it killed them. Emma's apartment was small but cozy, with warm lighting and photographs covering every surface. Pictures of her late husband Michael, of friends and family, of happier times before everything went wrong. Marcus stood by the window, looking down at the street below, while Emma and Agent Walsh went over the plan one more time. "Sarah Mitchell is highly trained," Agent Walsh said. "Former military. 15 years with the Bureau. She's not going to walk into an obvious trap." "She doesn't have to," Emma replied. "She just has to think she's smarter than us." Emma had positioned herself on the couch, making herself visible through the window. To anyone watching from the street, she looked relaxed and unguarded. But Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand stayed near the gun hidden under a cushion. "How do we know she'll come tonight?" Marcus asked. "Because she's desperate," Agent Walsh said. "The FBI has frozen all her accounts, put out a warrant for her arrest. She has maybe 12 hours before every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for her. And she blames us for destroying her life," Emma added quietly. Marcus watched the car drive slowly past the building for the third time in 10 minutes. "I think she's already here." Agent Walsh spoke into her radio. "All units, we may have visual contact. Stay alert, but maintain distance." The car passed by again, and this time it stopped. A woman got out, tall, blonde, wearing dark clothing. Even from 4 stories up, Marcus could see the gun in her hand. "That's her," Agent Walsh confirmed. "Sarah Mitchell." Emma stood up from the couch. "Remember the plan. She'll try to come up the fire escape. When she does, I'll keep her talking while you two get behind her." "Emma," Marcus said, moving toward her. "No," she said firmly. "Stay by the window where she can see you. She needs to think we're alone up here." Marcus wanted to argue, but he could see in Emma's eyes that this was something she needed to do. Sarah Mitchell had betrayed her trust, helped kill the man she was trying to save, and destroyed any chance of easy justice. This was personal. "Be careful," he said. Emma smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've been careful my whole life. Look where it got me." Agent Walsh moved toward the kitchen, where she could hide behind the refrigerator. Marcus positioned himself by the window, in plain view of anyone looking up from the street. They waited. The building was old, and Marcus could hear every creak and groan as someone climbed the fire escape. Sarah Mitchell wasn't trying to be quiet. She wanted them to know she was coming. "Emma?" Sarah's voice called from outside the fire escape window. "I know you're in there." Emma walked to the window, but didn't open it. Hello, Sarah. Open the window, Emma. We need to talk. I think we're done talking, Emma replied. You sold us out. You helped murderers go free. I helped myself survive. Sarah shouted. Do you have any idea what it's like being an honest FBI agent? Watching criminals buy their way out of jail while you make $50,000 a year. So you decided to become a criminal yourself? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. I decided to stop being naive. The system is corrupt, Emma. It always has been. The only choice is whether you get rich or get used. Marcus could see Sarah through the window now. She had climbed onto the fire escape landing and was pointing her gun at the glass. Open the window or I'll shoot through it, Sarah said. Emma looked at Marcus, then back at Sarah. If I open the window, will you at least tell me why? Why my husband had to die? Why Thomas Sterling had to die? Because they were in the way, Sarah said simply. Your husband was investigating David Kim's finances. He was getting too close to the truth. And Thomas Sterling was going to ruin everything with his conscience and his morals. So you helped kill them. I looked the other way, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. Not to their families, Emma said. She reached for the window latch, and Marcus felt his heart stop. This was the most dangerous moment. When Sarah would be coming to the window, gun drawn, expecting to find them helpless. Emma opened the window, and Sarah Mitchell climbed through. She was smaller than Marcus had expected, but her eyes were cold and professional. The gun in her hand never wavered. Where's Sterling? Sarah asked. Right here, Marcus said, stepping away from the other window. Sarah turned the gun toward him. Good. This will be easier if you're both in the same room. What's your plan, Sarah? Emma asked. Kill us and then what? Run away to some country without an extradition treaty. Something like that, Sarah said. I have new identities prepared, offshore accounts that no one knows about. I'll disappear, and this whole mess will disappear with me. Except for the recordings, Emma said. The evidence. The testimony from Robert Hayes and the others. Sarah's smile was cold. Without you two to testify, the case falls apart. Hayes and his friends will claim they were coerced, that the recordings were fake. Their lawyers will get them out of jail within 6 months. Marcus felt sick, and they'll go back to stealing and killing. That's not my problem anymore, Sarah said. My problem is making sure you two can't cause any more trouble. She raised a gun, pointing it at Emma's chest. I'm sorry it has to end this way, Emma. I actually liked you. No, you didn't, Emma said quietly. You never liked anyone. You just used people until they weren't useful anymore. Maybe, Sarah said, but I'm still sorry. Her finger tightened on the trigger, and Marcus knew he had to do something. He couldn't just stand there and watch Emma die. He lunged forward, shouting Emma's name. The gun went off. Marcus felt the bullet tear through his shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the coffee table. Pain exploded through his body, but he could see that Emma was still standing, still alive. Marcus, Emma screamed, moving toward him. Stay back, Sarah commanded, swinging the gun toward Emma again. But Marcus's desperate charge had bought them the seconds they needed. Agent Walsh stepped out from behind the refrigerator, her own gun drawn. Drop your weapon, Walsh commanded. Sarah spun around, and for a moment, the three women faced each other in the small apartment, Emma unarmed, Sarah with her gun pointed at Walsh, and Walsh with her gun pointed at Sarah. It's over, Sarah, Walsh said. There are FBI agents surrounding the building. There's nowhere to run. There's always somewhere to run, Sarah said. You just have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get there. She moved the gun back toward Emma. I kill her, then I walk out of here. In all the confusion, I'll have time to get away. No, Marcus said, struggling to sit up despite the blood pouring from his shoulder. You won't. Sarah looked at him with contempt. You're bleeding out, Sterling. You'll be dead in 10 minutes. Maybe, Marcus said, but I'll live long enough to see you arrested. He pulled out his phone with his good hand. On the screen was a video call. Live, recording, broadcasting to every major news network in the country. Say hello to America, Agent Mitchell, Marcus said. They've been watching everything for the past 5 minutes. Sarah's face went white. That's impossible. Emma taught me a few things about technology, Marcus said, including how to live stream video. Every word you've said, every threat you've made, every confession, it's all been broadcast live to millions of people. Sarah looked around the apartment like a trapped animal. You're bluffing. Emma held up her own phone. CNN, Fox News, NBC, CBS, and about 50,000 people on social media. You're famous, Sarah. Everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. The sound of footsteps thundered up the stairs outside the apartment. The FBI backup team was moving in. It's over, Agent Walsh said. Put down the gun. For a moment, Sarah Mitchell stood perfectly still. Marcus could see her mind working, calculating, looking for a way out. But there was no way out. Not anymore. You know what the funny thing is? Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. I actually believed in justice once. When I first joined the FBI, I thought I could make a difference. I thought I could help people. You still can, Emma said gently. Put down the gun and testify against Hayes and the others. Help us make sure they never hurt anyone else. Sarah laughed, and it was the saddest sound Marcus had ever heard. You still don't get it, do you? There are hundreds of Robert Hayes out there. Thousands of corrupt officials taking money to look the other way. You've won one battle, but the war is never going to end. Then we keep fighting, Marcus said. Battle by battle, case by case. We don't give up just because it's hard. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Your father said something like that once. When I was still honest, when I still cared. He said that good people have to keep fighting, even when it seems hopeless. He was right, Emma said. Yeah, Sarah said softly. He was... She dropped the gun. Agent Walsh moved quickly, kicking the weapon away and cuffing Sarah's hands behind her back. The backup team burst through the door, but the fight was already over. As the paramedics worked on Marcus's shoulder, he watched Sarah Mitchell being led away in handcuffs. She looked smaller now, older, broken by the weight of her choices. Will she testify? Marcus asked Agent Walsh. I think she will, Walsh replied. The media attention makes it impossible for Hayes and the others to claim they were coerced. And I think Sarah wants to do one good thing before this is all over. Emma sat down beside Marcus on the couch, careful not to bump his injured arm. How are you feeling? Like I've been shot, Marcus said, then smiled. But also like we actually did it. We got them. We got them, Emma confirmed. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of the FBI team processing the crime scene. Outside, Marcus could see news vans arriving, reporters setting up cameras, crowds of people gathering to see what was happening. So what now? Emma asked. Marcus thought about it. Sterling Industries would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. The stolen money would have to be returned to the employees and charities. There would be trials, investigations, media attention that would last for months. But for the first time in years, Marcus wasn't overwhelmed by the work ahead. He had Emma beside him. He had the truth on his side, and he had a chance to honor his father's memory by building the kind of company Thomas Sterling had always dreamed of. Now we go home, Marcus said. We heal, and then we start building something better. Together? Emma asked. Marcus took her hand with his good arm. I wouldn't want to do it any other way. 6 months later, Marcus Sterling stood in the same office where this whole adventure had begun. But everything was different now. The walls were covered with pictures of employees, not profit charts. The desk was smaller, more welcoming. And most importantly, Emmett sat across from him, not as his assistant, but as his partner in every sense of the word. The employee profit-sharing program is working better than we expected, Emma said, looking at the quarterly reports. Productivity is up 30%. Turnover is down to almost zero, and morale surveys show the highest satisfaction rates in the company's history. Dad would be proud, Marcus said. He is proud, Emma corrected. Wherever he is, he's watching us rebuild everything he believed in. Marcus walked to the window and looked down at the street below. The same city, the same people, but somehow everything looked brighter now, fuller of possibility. He said, a year ago, I was the most miserable millionaire in America. I had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. And now, Marcus turned back to Emma, this woman who had refused to quit, who had turned his life upside down in the best possible way, who had saved him from becoming a man his father wouldn't recognize. Now I have everything that matters, he said. I have work that means something. I have employees who trust me. I have a company that helps people instead of using them. And Emma prompted, smiling. And I have you, Marcus said, the woman who saw something worth saving in a broken, angry man who had forgotten how to be human. Emma stood up and walked over to him. You were never broken, Marcus. You were just lost. All I did was help you find your way home. Marcus pulled her close, careful of his shoulder that was still healing. So what's next for us? Well, Emma said, Agent Walsh called this morning. She wants to know if we'd be interested in consulting on other corporate corruption cases. More investigations? More dangerous people who want to kill us? Probably, Emma said cheerfully. Marcus laughed. Sounds perfect. Because that's what they did now. Marcus Sterling and Emma Chun, the CEO and the private investigator who had fallen in love while fighting for justice. They saved companies from corrupt executives, helped employees get their stolen money back, and made sure that people like Robert Hayes and Sarah Mitchell faced the consequences of their actions. It wasn't always easy. There were more threats, more attempt at revenge, more people who thought money was more important than morality. But Marcus and Emma faced it all together, with the FBI behind them, the truth on their side, and love in their hearts. And sometimes, late at night when they were alone in the office that had once been a place of anger and fear, Marcus would think about the day Emma Chun had refused to quit, the day she had looked him in the eye and told him he was worth saving. She had been right about everything, about healing, about justice, about the possibility of becoming better than you were yesterday. But most of all, she had been right about love, that it could heal any wound, overcome any obstacle, and transform any life.